conceptual perspective to things. People talk about it as everything success, all of the elements.
Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace dropping in on you. Hopefully, you're getting your day off to a great start. This is how I normally want to get in early in the morning. I know some of you guys are probably not expecting it this early, and some of you probably are not up yet. But whatever is going on, you'll be able to watch this video on replay as long as you want, because it'll be up on a number of different platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, TV, YouTube, of course, on the website. It'll be in audio on the podcast. So there's going to be a lot of different ways that you'll be able to catch this later for those of you who miss it. But I wanted to get this in because there's a lot going on today, and I want to make sure that if possible, you can start off with something to really, really get your mind going and flowing and thinking about some things that you can do that will literally change your life forever. And there's an old saying that people that I've heard so many times, and it's spoken so frequently that it's become cliche-ish, but it's so true. And that is literally one decision can change your life forever. And it's making the choice to do something that is so distinctively powerful that nothing is the same again. And those opportunities present themselves literally every day. The idea that you have to sit around and wait an entire lifetime for something to come along and create a new reality for you is ridiculous. You literally have the opportunity every day to change your life for the better. The problem is we tend to avoid those situations. We tend to avoid the realities that are often associated with those situations. And I want to kind of talk to you about that this morning. Before I do, as always, got to pay the bills. So if you go over to the description box, there are a number of different resources that we offer at the Visionetics Institute, through which you can literally change your lives. And we're going to talk about something interesting when it comes to that, because there's several different ways to trigger these changes that are necessary. And we're going to talk about three powerful ways, or the most common ways that these things happen, that you are forced or you move into a new reality. But from everything from new skills, the coaching on demand subscription, it's the next best thing to actually coming in and hiring me for one-on-one sessions. We have a couple of people that's jumped on that, and I'm looking forward to working this out and making this be a part of the way that we're going to reach more people, which is my goal. I wanted to last year find a way to touch 1 million lives, and everything that could jump in the way did jump in the way, but we got it done over multiple channels through many mediums. But we were able to hit that number thanks primarily to YouTube, but Facebook helped out, the website helped out, book purchases. It was a number of different ways, but we counted any way that people were literally touched by what I am doing. Anyway, we want to double that this year. So we are being very, very aggressive in our goal setting for what we want to do. But the idea of what I do is to change lives and to touch lives. And so that is something that we're doing. But what I want to talk to you about today, I want to get right into it, is actually a principle that my great-grandfather, who was also my father, my adopted father, the man who taught me the most about manhood, C.D. Wallace, what he taught me is this principle now that's playing out in science. It's amazing how our elders and ancestors who had very little formal education had so much wisdom, because he had a second grade education, but it was something he told me when I was 17 years old. He had started to teach me at around about 11, literally around about maybe 10, about 8 or 9. He took me from under the tutelage of my great grandmother and said, I got it from here. She taught me a lot of the principles of life. She taught me things that were associated with education, associated with finance and things of that nature. She gave me the basics, but when it came time for me to transition physically, emotionally, mentally into the next stage of male development, he took over. And he started to teach me through principles. If he was working on the car, I was out there with him. If he was fixing something in the house, if he was cutting the yard, everywhere he went, he took me. If it was something to be done, he wanted me to learn how to use my hands, but he wanted me to learn how to think. But it was something he told me at the age of 17 that's going to be the key focus of what we're going to talk about here today. But I'm going to give you the science behind it, which he probably didn't have a clue of. He just knew it. But he said, son, I'm going to tell you something. And if you get what I'm telling you today, I try to give you something every day. But if you get this one thing, your life is going to be so much better. And he said that you're going to find in this life, no matter how much you try to avoid it, that you're going to be in one of three places. Many of you have heard me say this many times before. It's because it's the most lasting and impressionable and impactful thing my grandfather ever taught me, because it reigns true literally on a daily basis. He says you're either going to be going into a storm, in a storm, or coming out of a storm. He says it's that simple. That's what life is. Life is about going into storms, being in storms, and coming out of storms. And he said, when you first find yourself in the storm, your natural instinct is going to be to find who to blame for how you got there. He said, don't waste your time. 90% of the time, it's you. Something you did, a decision you made, somebody you allowed to get too close to you, whatever it is, it always leads back to you. Don't worry about that. You need to know at some point, but that's not your focus right now. You need to know. Why do you need to know? Because you don't want to do it again. But your focus, he says, your number one responsibility as a man when you find yourself in the storm is to make sure you come out of the storm a better man than when you went in. That the storm is there to shape you. The storm is there to challenge you. The storm is there to push you into a state of growth. And so that's how I've always looked at life. It's like, okay, here comes the storm. And I'm not going to avoid it. You can't circumvent the storms of life. You can't circumvent the vicissitudes of life. You are not going to find your way and navigate your way around challenges, pain, struggles, loss, these things that are an inevitable part of life. What you can do is make sure that when you find yourself in the storm, that you allow the storm to grow you, to shape you, to challenge you, to push you to a place where you are elevating yourself by the challenges within. It's like the storm is, you can be analogous to going to the gym. You can go to the gym and you can get nothing out of the gym. You can sit there and say, man, I'm not going to push myself. I'm not finna sweat. I'm not finna get my heart rate up. I'm not finna push till I get to a burn, which is telling me that, I'm maxing my muscles and I'm pushing and I'm developing and I'm going to literally grow more muscle mass, and I'm going to become stronger and more productive and physically productive. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just sit around, walk around the gym, sit down, whine and complain because I'm at the gym, take selfies, but I'm not finna really hit this thing and make it work for me. That's the same thing that you're in a microcosmic storm. When you're in the gym, you got a choice. You can let the gym shape you, or you can sit up and whine because you don't really want to be there. You got to make a choice. Same thing when any storm you come into a storm of loss, you come into a storm of financial challenge, you come into a storm of relational complexity. And whatever that storm is, you have to make up in your mind that you're going to allow the storm to develop. You see, you can come into a storm of relational complexity, and what happens? It forces you to develop empathy. It forces you to develop patience. It forces you to be more observant of what's going on, because you're now realizing that life isn't just about you. There are other people involved in this life, and the better you create relationships with these people, the better your life turns out. So you start to look at things, you become empathetic, you start to listen, you start to understand and be aware of what they're going through. You're creating a new you that is more capable of dealing with other people, which makes you more capable of accomplishing unbelievable things, because we're designed to work together. Just giving you some things. But see, here's the problem. See, in between chaos And stagnancy is where your greatest self lies. See, we start out with stagnancy on one extreme, one polar extreme of the possible existence in our lives. Stagnancy is this place where it's absolutely nothing happening, but it's highly predictable. It's seemingly safe because there's no risk being involved. You're not really making, you're getting up every day doing the same exact thing. You know what the outcome is going to be. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to work 8 hours. I'm going to come home. After doing that for 2 weeks, I'm going to get a paycheck. The paycheck is going to be blah, blah, blah dollars and 20 something cents because this is what I do every day. It's so predictable. I'm going to pay blah, 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 blah. I'm going to have this much left over, which and it's real predictable, but there's no need for growth. Why? Because I can do this with my eyes closed. So stagnancy never produces growth, right? The other extreme of that polar is chaos. There's no order to it, no predictability. You don't have any control over it. Everything around you is going crazy because you haven't invested yourself into bringing some form of order to it, right? So there's chaos. Chaos is absolutely disruptive. It's everything going on, but nothing making sense. And you having absolutely no control over that. So we have at one end, stagnancy, nothing. At the other end, chaos, everything going, but no order, ability to understand or predict or control the outcome. Then after, back closer to stagnancy is this thing that's the most dangerous thing there is. People would think stagnancy is dangerous, but most people know they're stagnant. And if they want something better out of life, they'll find a way to get out of stagnancy. Most people hate chaos because it's crazy. Nothing's coming up. You cannot predict it. So you live a life on stress street. So nobody's trying to be in chaos. But order is right after stagnancy. Now, order brings about it with it a high level of predictability, but it also brings something else that's extremely dangerous: comfort. Why? Because I come out here, I do some things, I got some order, I'm growing, but I'm not growing at a rapid rate because there's very little disruption, there's very little discomfort. I'm in a very comfortable place. The problem with comfort is it produces complacency. If you find yourself in a place of comfort in your relationship, in your business aspirations, in your finances, in your academic aspirations, if you find yourself in a place of comfort, you're going to find yourself becoming complacent, satisfied, and no movement. The more satisfied you become, the less growth and the less capacity of your potential. In the passing of Kobe Bryant, I remembered of something I heard him say, years and years ago. He said, I'm always trying to outwork my potential. So he had an idea of what he was capable of, and he wanted more than that. He was literally going to push himself physically, emotionally, and mentally to the edges of what he felt his capacity was, and then go beyond that. And that's what you want to be. You want to be the person that's never satisfied, not discontent, but just knowing I can do better than this. Not judging yourself and beating yourself up because of where you're at, but being very, very aggressive because you know there's more. But here's the thing: you're not going to get that in order. So where is growth really happening? Growth happens in this area of existence that can be referred to as complexity or adversity or challenge. Complexity in life is this place where, in order to meet the challenges of the day, you got to become a little better. If you look at athletes, they're in a state of complexity because they're doing more workouts, they're challenging themselves, they're putting themselves to the limit. Their workouts are lasting longer. Their workouts are adding more movements and skill challenges to it. You're looking at the academic, they're spending more time in the library, more time in the books, they're doing more reading. You're looking at the CEO, they're reading an average of 1 book a week, 52 books a year, when the average American only reads 1. They're separating themselves through the complexity dynamic of saying there's a lot to learn. Now, here's the complexity dynamic. It has less predictability because it comes with more risk, but it has the most reward. You have to be willing to step outside of the box. The problem is when you look at most Americans, even if they're not happy, totally happy with their lives, they found a way to be comfort. They found a way to be comfortable. The problem with comfort is that it does not produce growth. The problem with comfort is it doesn't produce growth. Some of the greatest success stories I had is when someone was thrust or moved out of order. You know, you got stagnancy, order, complexity, and chaos. When someone is moved out of order, where they're comfortable, and pushed into complexity, where they become uncomfortable, that's where the greatest success stories happen. Now, I mean, no matter where you look at, anybody that was comfortable and found a place of comfort is never going to be at the top of the list of success stories. It just will not happen, because comfort breeds complacency and ultimately, in some ways, can lead to stagnancy. So what happens? You've got to find a way to get to complexity. And then you've got to be understanding and aware of the fact that as you move into complexity, you are not going to be comfortable. You have to get to a point, and I've said this often, that you become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, I'm not talking about uncomfortable in the way of stress and anxiety. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that you just can't show up and just by being there get what you need from your day, get what you need from your relationship. You got to invest yourself. You got to be aware. You got to be willing to make shifts and moves and manage the day in your life in multiple areas. And it's not easy. It calls for you to be invested and aware and thinking and open-minded. It calls for you to sit up and say, that didn't work today. I got to try this. Man, that was a setback. I got to do this. It's not just showing up and knowing every 2 weeks I'm going to have this in my bank account. I'm going to do this. Yes, that's order. And yes, it appears safe. Here's the problem I can tell you. Almost every person that has that kind of guarantee and safety isn't really that safe, and it's not really that big of a guarantee. Why? Because they are almost always going to be dependent upon someone else to be able to do that. So all it takes is what's happening a lot right now is to be called in and said, we're going to have to let you go, or we're shutting down. And then what happens? Now, what just happened? You found the first trigger to complexity. You just got told that you no longer have your position of comfort. You no longer have your place in the world where you simply have to get up and show up and do something you've been doing so long. You can do it with your eyes closed and pick up your guaranteed amount of blah, blah, blah dollars and 25 cents. That's not going to happen now. But where are you now? You're in complexity. You got the first trigger that moves people into complexity. You got forced into it. You had no choice. Somebody showed up and shook your world up, and you had absolutely no control over it. So what you thought was safe wasn't really safe. But now what do you got to do? You got to grow. You're going to have to grow. You're going to have to come up with ideas. You're going to have to do something different that you haven't done before that's going to feel uncomfortable, but it's going to stretch you. That's number one. That's the first trigger. That's how you're going to get there. A lot of people will not move out of order, out of that place of order and comfort until they're forced out. But trust me, at some point in life, it's going to happen if you don't do it yourself. The second way is to realize that it needs to be done and realize that by yourself, you don't have exactly what it takes, or you don't specifically know how. And then you get someone to help you move into a place of complexity and learn how to maneuver through it, to learn how to engage it and take it on. That's where I come in. That's the thing I do for my clients. I set them up in complexity, make it make sense to them, show them how to adjust, show them and give them a mindset that starts with self-confidence. You have to believe that you can navigate it. You have to believe that you can overcome it. You have to believe that there's absolutely nothing you're going to face that you're not built for. That is what I do. But that isn't the best way. And people say, well, why would you say that? Because there are some people, and I was one of those people, that just simply understands that, man, when I'm in adversity, and I've said this before, I've literally written this in Two of my books, I know that I've made this statement, the first book and the fourth book. And it simply says, adversity is the fertile soil where the seed of faith is planted and cultivated. You will not grow without adversity. You will not. I'm sorry. You can try to hide from it, run from it. It is the adversity that is the soil in which the seed of faith is planted. See, adversity demands faith. See, when you're living in the category or the state of order where everything is comfortable, you don't need faith. Why? Because you know if you show up every day and do your job, that's not faith. That's reason. That's rationale. Faith is evidenced because faith becomes the evidence of those things that you cannot see and reasonably expect. It's not faith if I can see it and I know if I just show up to work. That's not faith. That's reason. Faith is saying, I'm going to leave this job, go out and start a business in an industry where there's a market for me and there's no guarantee, but I know I'm going to make it. No matter what, no matter how many setbacks, no matter how long it takes me to get to profitability, I know that there's a place in this market for me. I have a gift that has opened the door for that. I know it. I'm going to walk in it. I'm going to live in it. I'm going to stand in it, and I'm going to keep going. As long as I'm breathing, I'm still in the fight, and I trust the process. That's faith. But see, you can't even activate faith without adversity. See, it's the discomfort of adversity that triggers the need for faith. That's the one you, if you have it, if you can't, get up today and say, I got to get out of this comfort zone. If you don't quite know how, contact me and we'll get you out of the comfort zone. That's what I do. I'm for the people who know there's something better but don't necessarily know how to get there. I'm that person. What you don't want to happen is trigger number one to be the catalyst. Why? Because you have absolutely no control over when, you have absolutely control over what. It could be anything that takes you from order and comfort to complexity and discomfort. And you would love to be the person who took control over it and made it happen on your terms than to have life take over. You would hate to be that person to show up in a job you've had for 15 years. I've seen it happen to someone that was there and all they needed was 2 more years to retire. And they didn't just lose the job, they lost everything they had invested in their retirement. I saw that a lot back in the early 2000s. I functioned as what is known as a relocation specialist. I had a company where I worked, and I did international relocations. I handled everything from A to Z. I basically, what I did is high-level companies like EDS, Nortel, Flora Daniels, Baker Hughes, Unical, and a number of others, Enron, which is why I'm bringing this up. I expatriated their high-level executives, people who were going to go run offices in other countries. And the expatriation is literally setting them up, getting their documents, like their visas, their passports, sending them on home finding trips to get over there because their companies will cover most of the expenses of living over there. And so they were really banking their salaries. But you would get them over there. You would also handle the packing up of their household goods if they were selling their house or renting their house out, moving their household goods out, predominantly putting it in storage. They would each have a sea and an air allotment. And if you ever seen these big sea containers that's on these ships, they can ship almost anything you can imagine, from vehicles to machine parts, but also household goods. Those goods will be packed up, put in those containers, and it will be shipped over there. Take anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks to get over there, depending on what shipping company you use, P&O, Lord, Maersk, whatever. You ship them over there, right? All right. Then you get an air shipment for the things they need immediately, and you ship the air shipment. They get there. You get a destination agent at the other end of it that does what you do in your country, but they do it there, and you get them to do the destination services like unpacking, delivering, and all that stuff, and handling it up. But I did this. So when Enron collapsed, guess who got the assignment to repatriate all their executives? I did. And what I was able to do was bring them back and literally learn how life was impacting them. because these were people coming back to no job. Enron was gone. There were a few employees. I happen to know one IT guy who stayed on about 2 more years after the collapse because there were some things that had to be done from records and all that stuff that was necessary. So they stayed on, but everybody else was let go. There was one lady who was a personal assistant to one of the executives who had went overseas with him. He took her with him, his personal assistant, and she, a glorified, basic glorified secretary that does everything, handles all his planning and everything like that makes him more efficient. And she had been with the company nearly 30 years. Based off of the false financials that they were submitting, she was heavily invested in her 401k and her other investments in Enron. She was expecting to retire in a couple of years, set for life, and she was let go broke. Talking about being pushed into complexity and having absolutely no control of when and how and what. That's what can happen in life. When you think you've played it safe, when you've taken that way and you rule, the thing is you want to feel a level of discomfort. I'm not talking about being sadomasochistic. I'm talking about saying if it's too easy, something's not right. If it's just flowing too easy, something's not. Now there's a difference in something just being stagnant or ordered and repetitive and something building momentum. Because see, when you start to move in something and you gain a little traction, you're going to start to move and it's going to start to pick up speed, and you're going to have moments of momentum where it seems like everything's flowing, everything's falling into place. But you still will have that level of discomfort because things are changing. And while the momentum is moving, you've got to make good decisions. And at some point, one of the things you do or something outside of yourself will stop the momentum and you've got to rebuild it again. That's what keeps the things going. You don't become frustrated. You don't become frenetic and unglued. You don't lose it. You sit up and make up in your mind and understand that this is a part of the process. But you are not going to get it in a place of stagnancy. And see, when people say they're stuck, what they're actually saying is they're stagnant because they're not stuck. Stuck implies that you can't get out. No, you're stagnant because you're still and you're not moving. And until you make a choice, you're just going to be there. But you can come out of it so you're not stuck. Now, the next thing is the order. When you've got all this order, you've got comfort. The problem with comfort is it does not challenge you and push you to a place of growth. And if you're not growing, you're not becoming fully what you're capable of. So many people leave this world without being anywhere close to what they were designed to be. Let me say that again. So many people leave this world without ever becoming anywhere close to what they were designed to be. One of my most favorite speakers, leaders, pastors, preachers, whatever you want to label him as, he's just inspirational and very, very well sound in principle and practice. And that's Dr. Miles Monroe. And something Dr. Miles Monroe said, I've heard Les Brown repeat it and a couple of other people, but he said that the cemetery is the wealthiest place on the planet. And he validates that by saying in the cemetery, you'll find books unwritten, speeches undone, companies not started, relationships not kindled, and on and on and on of things that people were meant to do. Life's not changed because someone didn't step into their purpose, someone didn't activate their gift, and someone didn't take the challenge of becoming their best self. You will not find your best self in stagnancy. You will not find your best self in comfort. You will not find your best self in chaos. You can only find your best self in the complexity that drives you towards growth, the complexity of adversity. It is adversity that is the fertile soil in which the seed of faith is planted and cultivated. You will not and cannot get to where you are the best you can possibly be until you purposefully are be forced into a place of change, a place of adversity, a place of difficulty, a place of challenge. It is simply how we are meant to grow. You go in the gym, if you don't do something challenging, you will not gain anything. If you don't take on something challenging in school, you will just be there going through the motions. if you don't put some challenging goals on your relationship, you will just have a mediocre relationship. It is in the challenges and the adversity that we are forced to grow in order to meet the need of the challenge. Everything that I've become, I became because I ran into something that was bigger than me at the moment that I had to grow into in order to handle. That's what you need to understand about life. Stop running from adversity. Stop running from the vicissitudes of life. Stop running from the challenges and start standing up to them and start looking at them and saying, okay, I've got to become something new to handle this. I've got to evolve into someone stronger, someone wiser, someone more knowledgeable, someone more connected. I have to if I'm going to handle this. Hopefully you were blessed with something from what I just shared with you, but that is so important. I had to drop that on you, and it's amazing how a man with a second grade education was the first one to drop that on me. And I've seen it, I've literally studied it, I've learned the science behind it. You are meant to be challenged, but you also have a brain and a mind that's meant to keep you thinking you need to be safe. The first responsibility of the most ancient part of the brain, the reptilian brain as it is known, or the ancient brain as it is known in the limbic system, is this: to keep you safe. But when that part of the brain developed, there were a lot of things to be kept safe from. We live in a world right now, relatively speaking, where a lot of the things that could kill you back then doesn't even exist in our environment. You know, we don't walk out of the house thinking there's a good chance I won't make it back every day. Now, there are places in the world where that does happen, but not where we live. Now, it could happen, but we don't expect it to happen. I don't think there's anybody expecting to die when they leave the house. Um, but the brain sees other risks now because it's trained. That reptilian part of the brain is trained to see anything wrong that can cause pain. And see, now it defines pain as emotional pain, mental pain, psychological pain, spiritual pain, physical pain. So it's looking for things. And so it says, no, you don't want to do that. That's dangerous. And so it says, stay over here. And you have to actually say, but I can't grow here. I've got to get up and I've got to move over there. That part of the brain is going to always say, hey, you could lose money invested in that, but I'll never, ever grow my wealth if I don't. Am I going to lose sometimes? Absolutely. Am I going to make some bad decisions? Absolutely. Am I going to start some relationships that were better left unstarted? Absolutely. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's making all the right decisions. I don't care how good you are in business. You're going to have some times where it's going to get rough. But what you don't want is to never, ever step out there and take absolute control over your life to where if it is something going wrong, it's probably because you made a choice or a decision that you can now deal with and adjust to and move on. That's growth. That's, you learn both through poor decisions and good decisions. You learn what to do, what not to do. You learn how to navigate around particular situations and learn different things by facing things and actually taking those risks to move up. You're never going to grow as long as you're trying to play it safe. Yes, I can get up every day and I can go to work. And I know that if I go to work based off of what I've done for the last 10, 15, 20 years, that this is the amount that I'm going to get paid on the 1st and the 15th or every week or whenever you get paid. And that's what's going to happen. It's going to automatically be there. As long as I show up to work, clock in, sign in, or just step in, that's going to be there. Here's the problem with that. That's called order. And it's great for comfort because, hey, I just get up and do this. And I've done it so long that it's not even challenging to me. So now there's no growth. Now, when you first step into order, there'll be a little growth because you're probably going to be asked to do some things as you move up that you don't know how to do. So you have to grow a little bit as you move up the ladder. Okay, you got a new position, you have to learn a few new things, but nothing that's outside of the scope of what you feel is so you're comfortable. But here's the problem. Almost every situation in which that type of comfort exists, the person doesn't have control over what provides them that comfort. Normally, you're working for someone else that at any time can say, I need to talk with you. I'm sorry, we're going to have to let you go. And so now you have been forced into complexity. You now had no choice of when you entered into complexity and on what terms. It was chosen for you. And now you're going to have to figure it out. And now you're going to be forced to do something you haven't done in the last 20 years, and that's grow. Because you're going to have to face something you never faced before. Or you can choose to make that move. And this is not just about starting a business or doing something. It's about taking control of your life and being willing to move beyond the comfort zones that we find so much solace in, that we literally don't have the ability to create. That's the choice you have to make. And like I said, you can either get forced into it. You can come. The second way is to have someone help you get there. That's what I do. Or the third is simply sit up and say, you know what? I'm not sitting here anymore. I'm going out there and I'm going to make it happen, and you figure it out. What I would suggest is 2 or 3. Pay somebody, solicit somebody, find somebody, let them help you, or make the move yourself if you know how. A lot of people simply don't know how because they've been in the comfort zone so long that the slightest idea of stepping outside of the comfort zone sends them into an emotional and mental frenzy. So they need somebody to walk them through it in a process that seems safe enough for them, and with the know-how of how to get from point A to point B that they have designated is their next step. But if you know how and you're just not doing it, that's on you. If you don't find someone, what you don't want is life to do it for you, because you don't get a choice. It may be the loss of a loved one. It may be the loss of property. It may be loss of job. It may be a illness. You don't want life to be the first catalyst to push you into the place of complexity in this world, in this life. You want to take that step on your own. That's what I'm going to challenge you to do. On that note, I'm about to get out here. Don't forget, there are a lot of resources out there. Everything from books to working with me to getting the coaching on demand subscription, a bunch of other stuff. Just look in there, find something that can help you make a decision to start moving towards a change in life, start developing a more complex atmosphere that will challenge you to grow and be more prepared to be your best you. A lot of you are doing okay, and that's a problem because the world has told you you're successful, but you know there's way more inside of you than what you're doing. You know that you haven't even reached the tip of the iceberg. And yet you're sitting there. It's time for change. Make it happen. As I always say, I have chosen to live my life on full. So when I leave this place, I won't be one of those people that Dr. Miles Monroe talked about as far as the cemetery being the wealthiest place in the world because people didn't live out their potential. I'm going to live my life on full. When I leave this place, I will die on E, and I will be able to have left a legacy behind that will speak of me after I'm gone. And that's what you should want for your life. It's something that your great, great, great grandkids can know about because you walked this earth and you left an impression that was bigger than you. That's what you're here for. All of the other stuff is distraction. What you drive, what you wear, all this other stuff, how people feel about you, are you well liked, all that is distraction. Are you making an impression on this world that's so powerful that you're changing lives in a way that your life will speak of you after you're gone? That's the simple question. On that note, I'm checking out of here. You guys have an unbelievable day.
Here I come, ready or not. Frank Ocean make this record hot.
From a conceptual
sounded better than Jay.
perspective, things people talk
Real
about
talk,
it
I ain't
sound
throwing
successful.
shots. Careful who you leave clueless.